Yeah, so thank you very much. I had a dream last week that I got roasted on this stage, and 10 minutes ago I thought, well, if I got roasted, that's going to be a big chunk for each of everyone. But now I'm glad that some people made it, some more people made it, so I'm afraid it will be a tinier chunk, but after the lunch, I guess that's satisfying. Okay, so let's get started. Yeah, but don't you mind? So I like to get like to be roasted. I have opinions, and surprisingly, I've also got arguments. So no holding back in the QA session. Some shameless self plugs. Rocky already introduced me. I used to crack this joke that I had 10 years experience in Rust, but I've looked it up. Rust has been came into the world in 2009, so I guess this doesn't qualify me as a developer. Though actually, what I am having the most experience is enterprise JavaScript applications. I got a small development consulting company, but let's talk about versioned web components. So first of all, also getting to know who is asleep, who's not. Who has used web components? Raise your hands. Perfect. And what have you used them for? Micro-frontends. Perfect. You get the 10 euros after the presentation. What else? Pardon? Yeah, a pattern library. Perfect. Yep. So I'm good to go. That saved me some money. So yeah, we have seen, that's also the experience that I have, I seen them. So in Crosswork framework UI libraries, and nowadays they are used in combination with micro-frontends. So they can be used as containers for micro fragments. You can use them for a lot of other things, but I'm glad nobody said I've used it for this drop-down type of head select that is going to replace the crappy HTML select, because apparently no one has done this. So imagine. So the idea is we want to use multiple versions of a custom element. So imagine we could something like that, and then could presumably in some magic way. So we define the first one, and then we have with the same tag name we have the second one. So that is what people want to do, and that is what I'm going to hopefully show how you can do this. But there is some prior art, so you can already in a way do that with something like called scoped element registries. And as the name is applied, it's about multiple custom element registries that are scoped to a particular element, and every web component that leaves beneath that scope can be its own, can have its own class. Yeah, so this is an existing exposal. Playing around with this very difficult scopes, getting scopes to understand, convey is difficult. Closures, anyone? And I think one of the biggest drawbacks nowadays is that it's a non-declarative way, because the whole setup of the scoped custom element registry is done imperatively, so there's no representation in the DOM. So that is when you look at the DOM, you cannot easily rehydrate. And yeah, furthermore, development, I mean, the proposal is quite old, 5 years old, and at least in my experience, the adoption, the ecosystem is next to nothing. So imagine we could do this. So we have a tag name, we have our UI button, which is our custom element for that, and then we have a new version, UI button v2, and we register it with for the version 2. And imagine that it will look like that, so that you have you using the first one, that's the old one, and the new one is used with a version attribute. Well, introducing, I should have set up this audio system. Introducing versioned custom element registry, which is allowing you to do exactly like that. It's as easy as that. You define a custom element, you give it a version, and when you want to choose to render which custom element, you do it with a version attribute. Well, so let's start some nice coding. I just need to find my... yeah, there we are. So I think I'll make that one a little bit bigger. That one as well. Okay, so we don't have a polyfill in the beginning. We don't have that either. So, and we don't have that either. So that is what I said. So we have what we have here. I have a simple, it's built with lit, but doesn't really matter. And I define it. So that's the button version 1. And that would be that. So pretty easy. Okay. So I've already prepared version 2, and if I don't have any of the, so I can't do something like that. I can't do it. So you see the exception because the tag name has already been taken. So of course I could do something like that. I could do something like that still today. Yeah, I could do that, but I mean then I don't have the same tag name, which has major implications in a lot of use cases. Okay, so let's use the polyfill and add a version to it. Probably should change that one as well. Okay, so no, that has to be a string. So okay, so we see that one works. So I'll have the tag name, and I have the so I have the tag name, and I have the additional version. Okay, so and you see they both look the same. Why do I look like the same? Well, because that one obviously is the first one. It doesn't have a version associated. So if I give this a version, now we have 2 different ones. We have the I mean you can see this is so I could show you about instances. Yeah, and yeah, basically this is it. So but what are the things that sets this apart from so what are all other benefits that you get if you do it like that? So let's pretend that so if you're using custom elements, very often especially if you're using for your libraries, you can parameterize them by custom properties. So of course I can do that as well. Yeah, so probably something more recognizable. Yeah, so I have this in this button. I'm using a custom property, and the way I'm doing that is like that. So if I'm using now the second version, I have a little bit of a problem because now the second one, so this is the new version, gets the written. But luckily, as I've said, this plays along nicely. We can do something like that, and then it's fixed. So we can utilize the tools that we have. So because we're saying the original one never has a version attribute, or I mean this is subject change. Maybe might have an empty version attribute or something like that, and then we can leverage CSS to version things. And even if you're using the version stuff, we could do something. We could use those advanced attribute selectors, which match attributes which begin with a certain thing. So if you have certain semantics associated with the versions, you could also use it like that. And yeah, basically that's it. So I'll do a small recap. So scope element registries are heavy as a crown. So they have you cannot do that with scope element registry. What I also what I didn't show, but what is possible is that right now I can it has always the tag is always associated with the actual instance. So I can move it around and it always stays the same. And that also plays to the fact that everything is rehydratable. So whenever you look at the DOM, it is always giving exactly the same what it actually is representing. So yeah, I showed the version element registry. I think it's easy to grasp. It's declarative. It plays nicely along with CSS, and it can be tested now. So what comes next? So I've prepared a full proposal. I'm fleshing out the existing proposal, and then I'll finally propose it. And I need to turn my prototype into a proper polyfill. And I think to actually convince people, I should show it with a major UI library. I know what's the major web component UI library? Anyone? Does anyone wish? Lit is not a library. Lit is what you use to build something. Pardon? What would you say? Polaris. Well, never heard about that, but well, I'll give it a go. I thought about Shoelace, but Polaris. Sounds good. And yeah, so I'm looking for your feedback. So my first question would be, has anyone used scope element registries in production? Next one, would you use version custom element registry? At least one thumbs up. Yeah, so this is where you get the proposal, and this is where you get the demo that I've shown to you. And I think I'm open to questions right now, but I've also got some bonus prepared, so yeah. So I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you for a talk. I have two questions.
Yep.
First, about versions. Are there supported only numeric versions or text versions as well, like beta something?
It's basically, there's nothing associated with version. It just has to be, it can be a string, it can be anything. You just say, this is the tag name and this is the version for it. You can use numbers, you can use latest, you can use, I mean, the proposal is still in the works, but there's no, so the idea is that you can do whatever you want with it. So if you have semantic versioning for your UI library, you can utilize that and you can build upon that. But as you always are, you are the one to choose which version to use.
Mm-hmm. And
but if you would semantic versioning, if you're using 2.1.2, you could use CSS selectors that target 2.1.
Yeah, if it's string,
so that would make sense. But there's nothing.
Not a problem at all. And the second question: is there any way to define a default version of the component?
Yeah.
Because I see the use case for this scenario, for this proposal you described.
Yeah.
But also I see the clear vision. I see it is necessary to have a kind of default version defined. Yeah.
So right now the idea is that the first version that gets defined is the default version. So if you this is something that is debatable, but that's the idea. Yeah. Or we could also, I mean, it would also be possible to add an API to custom element registry to set the default version for a particular tag. Although I try to keep the amount of API changes really low.
For example, you want to update
yeah. Yeah, but although you can, don't forget that you control the DOM, so you can always tie the DOM to any service that gets the version now to be used, and then you could change this. But there are multiple devices. So yeah. So come next.
Thank you for the talk, and thank you for the proposal. This is I just wanted to comment that this is excellent from the point of view where at work we have a collection of different components that come within the same package, which is versioned separately from the components within it, and the components are individually versioned. So I was looking at one point at the versioned registry or scoped registry spec and thinking, I don't know how I'm going to make this work with our system. So this is basically exactly what we needed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Glad to hear.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you very much for presenting this. It's a really interesting idea. I think there are a couple of things that I would like to get into, if everyone will permit. This might get quite involved. The first piece of this is you mentioned scoped registries and you mentioned their complexities. I don't want to get too much into that, but could you go back to the slide? I think there was some details in there that I just wanted to look at. So one of the things was the non-declarative nature of scoped custom element registries. So just as a piece of information, like there is a carve out in the current iteration of the scoped element registry API to allow for a shadow root to have effectively an open slot for a scoped registry, so that you can declaratively say that this will have a scoped registry assigned to it at some point. So there's some work in progress there on that. It's not necessarily fully fleshed out, but that is something that's happening. I am very curious about the difficulties, if you could kind of enumerate those so I could better understand what the problems are with scoped element registries, please.
So I think you can see the one thing. So if you load the scoped element polyfill, the scoped element registry polyfill, it's like, I don't know, 1,000 lines of code, and it's using all kind of tricks to actually make things work. And it has to kind of like patch around things. And the prototype that I have is, I know, it boils down to 20 lines of code, something like that. And the one of the things is that in scoped element, they have to, the API surface, they have to change for the proposal is huge. So they have, and that's, I think that's one of the problems why it never came really into fruition, because you have to kind of, it is involving, so the implementation itself of scoped element registry in the browser is going to be complex.
I think you may want to look at the latest state of the art of this, because the proposal as described in this YCG explainer is out of date relative to the work that Anna has been doing in WebKit, that more precisely defines like a simpler API for scoped registries that would significantly narrow the amount of code for a polyfill. But I do understand and respect that there's like a practical difficulty today with the relative lines of code. But I wonder if that is something that will always remain in practice when scoped registries ship.
And apart from that, scoped registries, they don't play well. They don't have an answer to what happens if you move an element around the DOM. So it's a movement from one scope to another. What should happen? And I mean, so you cannot retain state if you do that. Or you can, but if you do that, then you have problems. Then I mean, and another, as I've said, another problem is that it is the rehydration is difficult. And
I think that the steps outlined for the new what has been dubbed revamped scoped custom element registries does have some very well specified steps for what happens for move operations. I would also like to draw your attention to the atomic move API, which has a new custom element callback called moved before.
Yeah, of course, I've seen that.
Or moved callback. Which allows you to retain state operations.
Yeah, you can retain state, but if you have one scope which is saying scope V1, and you have one scope V2, and you move an element from scope V2 to scope V1, what happens? You can retain state, but then it still retains
the definition will be locked. So if you move to a tree which has a different definition, your definition is retained because your scoped registry is retained.
But then you retain state, but then you lose rehydration. So then you have something in a tree that when you even then, if you rehydrate, even if the scope registry is declarative, you will lose the state.
Could you explain to me what rehydration is?
Rehydration means that the DOM is the state. So it means if I look at the DOM, it's exactly like that. So if I re-render it just from the DOM, I get exactly the same outcome, and I won't get that if I move an element which is scope based. I mean, this is a conceptual problem of scoped element registry. I don't think you can. I mean, I haven't looked at the new specs. So I looked at the published proposal. But I think that's one of the problems. I don't want to say the scoped element registry has its use cases, but I think my proposal could do the same things as scoped element registry could do, in a user-end way.
I can certainly acknowledge that.
And I think it is easier on many levels. So it's easier on the implementation level, easier on the user level. But I think we can chat all the time. But
yes.
maybe we might give somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm really.
There was another thing, but maybe I'll just Q+ myself.
Alrighty, yeah, I also want to second what you said, so please have a look at the updated specification now, because I think it solves some of the points. It will probably not solve your rehydration use case as it is called here. Regarding proposing that idea, the question is which body would you like to propose that to? Because if it would be a web platform API, I would see some issues, because one of the core principles of the web is that it is unversioned, which is basically a break of that principle here. Not saying it's bad, maybe it works great for use case, but I expect that it rather makes sense as a library, especially given my personal experience with the so-called DLL hell and comctl.dll version 5 and 6 and so on, which may cause problems for, let's say, general web developers.
I'll have a look at the updated proposal. I don't know whether it's public, so I haven't found it so far. Concerning version, so the idea was using something also prior art. So you might remember there's something called XML, and it has a version attribute. So this is something I think that is it is something. I think it's something that's easy to grasp. You've heard that there. I mean, and I think that this is something that should be taken into consideration, especially since in my experience, the scope it has never been. It is hard to understand, and it is. I mean, there might be other reasons, but I think the components. If components are always having versions. And in the way when we said we want to bring components to the browser, I think we did so many things. So that's so great about web components. They are natively supported in the browser. They allow you to runtime composition. But I think that you also then, if you want to do proper software engineering, you do proper components, you need also to do versions. And you need that's what I personally think. And apart from that, you're right. So right now my solution is not using any apart from all writing custom registry define, is not using any arcane hacks. It is just in itself. It's just using web components. And I think I'm running a little bit of time. But what I've done so far, I can also do like using proper slot redirection. I can do proper attribute reflection, stuff like that. And I can also do with the proposal right now, I can do runtime composition. So you can define a version for you can use that's built inherently into the thing. So I can say take this component of version 0.2, and then I have loaded the old one, and then I won't see the new one until it has been actually loaded.
Right.
Yeah. So are there any other? Yep.
Yeah, I had like 2 quick comments. One of them is like, I think. I guess the rehydration problem you've mentioned, isn't that already like pretty much existing? Like you already can have an element on different scopes if you move it across documents, right? So I don't see how that's generally solvable. And I guess, yeah, the other one would be like, basically, what's the, like Dylan mentioned it here, but to me, maybe I don't see the advantage other than having a default version. What would be the advantage versus having like, UI button -1 or whatnot?
Okay, so two questions. So the first thing, I think you're wrong. So I've already saying it's a good question. But with my approach, rehydration is possible because there's always exact match. So there's always the idea that you have a component, you have a tag name and a version, and there's always a one-to-one mapping. So whenever you express that, there's always rehydration possible. Be it wherever it stands in DOM, wherever you move it, it is always rehydratable.
If you're in a different document that doesn't have your registry, it's not, right?
If
you move it across documents, right, which is what I meant, it's just like you have an iframe with about blank. That iframe doesn't have an element registry, like doesn't have anything defined. You move it around.
I'm talking, of course, but if it were in the platform, that I mean, that if you have an iframe that you have in your browser has always the same platform, so it's not possible that you have a version registry in the one and the if it were a standard. But I'm talking the major use. One of the major use cases are micro-frontends, where you have like different fragments loading, and where you have a component where and it is in the way we are using web components for a lot of UI stuff. But you can use web components also for logic and to encapsulate logic in that. And it is possible to move one component to another micro-frontend that is living inside the same. I'm not talking about from component to iframe. I'm not talking about those use cases. What I mean with rehydration is that if you have a look at the DOM, that you always know what you get, and you won't get that with scoped element registries if you move across the scope boundaries.
Right, but it's the same if you move across iframe boundaries, right? Like.
No. I mean in the same document. If I can have in the same document,
like
can
different
the same scopes.
Document, but like conceptually, scope registries are already a thing. It's just like the scope is the document, right?
No, the
so
scope. The idea of scope elements that you can, whenever in the DOM, you can add. You can have multiple scopes at the same on the same page.
Right. My point is that concept it exists at a higher level. Well, like you already have scope registries. Just like the scope is a single document. You cannot create subscopes. The scope registries basically make that more flexible.
I think we might. I think we have to
we're
sort this
talking
out
about
later.
each
So
other,
I don't get your point. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Christian, Emilio, for question as well. I think it's time you both connect in the hallway.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Christian. Thank you very much.